Hello everyone, welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to be painting some Blood and Plunder ships with only craft paint. So this is a project definitely I've been wanting to do for a while, and it has been requested. People wanted me to do more projects with just craft paint, and it's more cost effective to use craft paint than miniature paints. But sometimes it's, can I get to the same high level of detail with craft paint? And that was my goal in this episode, was to paint my ships with a high level of detail, but only using craft paint. So I was really rigid on that. I made my washes with craft paint, all my metallics, everything is craft paint. And by the way, they are all folk art craft paints. That's the brand I prefer to use. There's other brands out there, but I prefer the folk art brand. And you can get this at the dollar store, Walmart, really cheap paints. And there's lots of advantages to using craft paint. One of them is durability. Craft paint is very durable. You can bang it around and it doesn't scratch. Miniature paints can tend to, not be as strong, or especially when you're painting these resin ships from Blood and Plunder. The actual craft paint really binds really well to it and makes it very sturdy. And if anybody watched some previous paint tutorial videos, I'm really pretty rough on the paint job. I like to do a dry brush and it really get pretty rough with it, and you'll see in this episode. So from that, also, I mentioned cost already. That would be a big thing as well. But also, one of the big things is it's non-toxic. Craft paint is non-toxic. It's really easy to use. Can clean up with just hot water. You don't need any turpentine or special chemicals. You don't need to do a well-ventilated area. And, especially me in Canada, it's not the greatest place to go into your garage and, do some spray painting and stuff like that. It doesn't really make sense. And I can do everything I need to do right here in the Plunder Den, and I know that I'm safe. I'm using something that's non-toxic. So that's the main reason why I like to use craft paints. Those three reasons. So let's take a look at the ships. This is what I painted. So I'll show you the two that I painted with the craft paint, and I'll show you a comparison with the one I did, the base colors in craft paint, but then used all my miniature paints to paint the rest of it. All right, so let's get the flag off. I'm going to show you how to make that as well in this episode. But on here, you can see this is kind of how I painted it. It looks like pretty good. You can see it looks like I've made my own little wash on here, kind of with a green-red scheme, which matches the other one I've done. And I do plan on using these two ships at AdeptiCon, so that was another reason why I painted these. I really needed, I wanted some more transportable ships. I learned a lot from my first time at AdeptiCon and realized that I needed something a little more portable. This one doesn't have a bow on the, a mast on the bow, so that's exactly what this ship looks like. It'll be great to, break down. I didn't glue the mast down again, just like the other ships that I've done that are portable. But not having that on the end, I can just bubble wrap this, stick it in a box, and off you go. Super easy, easy peasy to put in my luggage and transport safely. So that was kind of another idea by picking this ship. And I also didn't do a painting tutorial on my other one, and there was also some requests for that, so this is also a deciding factor on this particular ship. But I have some ideas on, some tournament play with these guys. All right, so this is the second one. I kind of went with the opposite red and green outside. You can see I've painted the back of the sails. The other ones are green on the back. But you can see I got pretty good high level detail on my metallics here, and I got a nice weathering on my deck. And around the gun ports, and it came out really good. Really happy with the end results, and I think they're very comparable. So let's take a look at the one that I did, with a base of craft paint, but also did all the details with washes, speed paints, and miniature paints. Now you can see there's a little bit more richness to it, and it's a little more flat because I used some of my craft paints are a little shinier than using miniature paints, but I was able to dull some of them down. You can see it wasn't over the top, but really not a huge difference. This is maybe a tad more detail, but I think for what we did here with the craft paints, I think that's a really good substitute. And if you only had craft paint, an excellent way to get your ships painted up and at a high level, high quality, I would think. All right, so if you guys like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information when I start these kind of projects. But everyone, let's get down to the table and let's start doing some painting. Okay, so I figured I'd start off a little different here, just showing you a little bit about the ship. I did an unboxing of this ship, the Barcalonga, new Firelock Games ship that they released this past, this year actually. Yeah, just showing you the box. This is the color that they've done it on, the example that they had on the box. This is what comes with it. You get cannons and the mast rigging. The sails, of course, we're going to make. And I don't paint the cannons and swivel guns in this episode. It was more of just the ship and the sails and the rigging. This is the one I previously completed already, and this is the one that I did with some miniature paints / craft paints. I did a little bit of both. But it's kind of my starting point. And I just want to show you that I'm obviously not going to bring this one to AdeptiCon because I decided to glue, a mast on the bow. I kind of like that look, but for transportation, I think I'll stick with the original design. It's much better, and that's why I decided to make two more. I could have used this one, but this one's going to be too hard to transport. Plus, I glued the sails in, so it's kind of permanently like this. So it's going to stay in the Plunder Den and not make the journey. All right, so how I start, I covered everything in black craft paint. This is Folk Art multi-surface craft paint. I glued the gun ports on already. Just saved you that beginning part. And just the parts where the rigging ties to. So I just glued it all together. This is what I use. I use Gorilla Glue to glue my pieces in. And once that dries, it's not coming off. Those are super sturdy. And then you add the craft paint on top, adds another layer of protection. So again, this is that multi-surface black craft paint by Folk Art. And I just figured I'd skip that step. It's just me putting black paint over everything. All right, so what you're going to need is a paper towel, kind of a wide paintbrush. That's real brown that we're using. Use the colors I always use on this channel for undertones, but I figured I'd start by showing you how I put it on. So you can see I took some of the paint off the brush. I don't use a wet palette. It doesn't work too well for craft paint, so just get a plate of some sort and just put it on there. And you can see how I just tap it on. Now, if you watched the bark video, you're kind of familiar on how I put this on. It's usually against the grains, not with it. But obviously, you're going to have to paint where the gun ports are, and some of the stuff you have to switch it around. And I kind of do a swirling motion when I get to the top deck, but you can see I mentioned how abusive I am with my brush. I really work it hard onto here. I'm still trying to keep some of the black underneath because we're not going to have as many speed paints and Agrax Earth Shader and all those fun things to kind of darken things up. I'm going to really need to have the undertones of the black showing in certain areas if we're going to capture the same look using the craft paint. We are going to make a wash that's going to help a little bit, but certainly I want to do the undertones by keeping that black there. So I'm kind of just pointing out not to put too much of this craft paint in those. Those are the compartments for your swivel guns, and you don't want to get craft paint down there. If it dries, it'll harden, and your swivel gun won't fit down the hole properly. So be careful about making sure you don't have too much paint on your brush and put them down those holes. So now I'm starting to work on the deck, and you can see the swirling motion I was talking about, and really pushing hard on this brush to work it in there. I just want it to be lighter on the deck on the certain components, but not on the edges. We're going to leave that dark tone there. Again, just adding weathering and shadowing as we're putting layers on. So I decided it wasn't light enough, so I'm going to go again, hit it again. And I talked about in the intro about how durable craft paint is. This is why, because this kind of painting, you end up being quite abusive here. But it actually gives it a really nice weathered look, and that's what I really like doing with this craft paint. So don't forget to get the inside. I kind of just do swirling motions on that. it's hard to go against the grains in there. It's just too small. You can't really get in there. I guess you could go with a smaller brush if you wanted to. But what I'm doing works just fine. Just get enough paint on there, cover most of it. But still leaving some of the black edges in there. It will give us some highlights as we go through. And always forget not to put too much paint on your brush. If you put too much on there, it'll just be one big brown streak. And if it gets that bad, you might have to put some black paint back on there and let it dry and do it again. But just make sure you have most of the paint out of the brush, and just want a little bit on there that you're tapping on there. It's kind of a dry brush, right? Not a full-on color change. All right, so now we're going to go to Bark Brown. That's our next undertone. And again, as I go along, you want less and less paint on your brush, because these colors are going to get brighter and brighter as we go along. So you can see I barely have to tap it. Just tap, tap, tap. And it just adds color to it immediately. All the raised areas get covered. The second color is so much faster. Look how fast I did that one side of the ship. It took like seconds. It doesn't take long. And you get a nice rich color because you already have all those other undertones you put on there. I really like doing my ships this way. It gives it a nice look to it. So we're just going to watch me tap all the different areas so you can see how I actually apply the paint. That's why I really wanted to spend more time doing it. Did kind of a top view so you guys can see a bit better. Wanted to improve on the bark video I did so you can see a little bit better of how I'm painting it. All right, so now we're again going to the center, doing the swirling motion and highlighting those centered pieces, just so that it's lighter as we add layers, because we want a weathered deck, right? So that's what we're working on as we add each color. And don't forget the bottom. I mean, I like to paint the bottom. I know some people just leave it white. But I prefer to paint the whole ship and not leave white resin on the bottom. But it's really up to you if you want to do that or not. I just kind of add to it. So I'm just showing you what I do in the bottom. I don't think I've ever shown that at any of the videos, what I actually do on the bottom of the ship. But again, you can see, look at how abusive I'm being. Really hitting that ship hard and getting those colors in. And even if you have like too much paint in a certain area, if you keep hitting it hard like that, it'll spread it around and it won't look as bad. Just keep working it. And that looks pretty good. Looks like we got here. Still has lots of dark colors underneath. It's looking good. The great thing about this is when you're putting this on, the paint dries really quickly, right? You can move from color to color. And I just wanted to make a note that I don't really wash the brush between. Through all these undertones, I don't. This is Pablo. It's an orange color. Again, another one I've always used on this channel. And you're going to use even less. Make sure you really dry this brush out, because this color is really potent and it can go south real quick if you add too much paint to it. So make sure there's only a little bit on the brush. But again, look how fast you can highlight it. Look at the richness of the wood already just from doing that. I really like these. Like I said, I really like these undertones. And really how we're going to achieve all the shadowing and stuff and weathering is really by doing this dry brush layering of different colors over top of each other, and that's really going to give us the effect we're looking for. So now if you were doing this ship and we could add all those crazy colors that I'm about to add to it, really after this orange or the Pablo, you really could just leave it like that, and the ship would look really good. This actually looks like a nice rich color. Maybe you want to add some other details to it, but really you could stop here. It would be just fine. Same with the next step we'll go to. That really, you get to those levels and you can just really stop there if you wanted to. But I like to continue on and add other colors to it. So, and we're just getting the inside as well. Again, make sure you don't use too much of the Pablo, because it's a really potent color. You don't really need much to highlight it. But look at the richness of the wood. Don't forget the bottom. But look at that. Came out just great. And all I've been doing is just banging it with that brush. And it really makes a difference. So now to complete the wood look, we're going to go to the camel and do one dry brush over the entire thing. Not so much on the main deck, but everywhere else. we're going to hit it with this camo and really just give it a like kind of a weathered wood look on the entire ship. Again, like the Pablo, make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush. This is even brighter than the Pablo. You can see it highlights really quickly. It gets all the grains on the wood. Then we're going to tap all the... I'm probably going to do the inside and the outside, the very tops. But we're not going to do too much on the top of the deck because we have some other colors we're going to put on there. And you can see I'm vigorously going with my brush again. And look at, there's hardly any paint on my brush, but look how much color I'm able to get on there. But it really works great. You get all the different undertones underneath and really giving you that old, kind of weathered wood look to your ship. And then I always say that this is kind of your base level. When you get to here, you got essentially a wooden ship, and then you're kind of adding the colors, kind of like they would add colors after the ship is done. So I kind of address the wood of the ship first before I get on to anything else. But look at the grains there come out. You got all those undertones underneath. So I really wanted to give you a close-up look of it this time, more so than the bark video. So you really get a good look at how it looks when I'm painting it and essentially the technique that I use. And I pretty well do most of the undertones with that one big brush, and you can see it covers things pretty quickly. It doesn't take a long time to get in there. So I'm just going to get on the inside of it as well, and I'm just telling you not to do the the top of the deck. Maybe just a little bit, but not a lot. And that should be good. We should have a nice look, weathered wood look to the ship. Let's take a look around. Here's the two ships completed. And you can see it's got a nice base color. And I did add a little bit to the top of the deck, but not as much as I did the sides and stuff. Just lightened it up a little bit. But I'm just giving you a real close-up view of what it looks like before I start adding colors onto it. And again, if you wanted to, you could just leave it at this stage, and you'd be done. You got weathered wood look. Maybe you did just the metallics on there. So now we're going to move to a color called Cafe Latte. It's a new one that I've been using. And it's a good undertone to get started on warming up our decks or giving a more weathered look. And I've moved to a smaller brush, if you can notice. I've used a smaller paintbrush now. And I'm going into finer details on the inside of the deck. So I'm just putting a little bit of paint. Usually what I do is I start from the center, and then I kind of try to brush the paint out to the edges. That way it kind of fades as it gets closer to the edges, and that's what you want. You want it to be faded to the edges where it's a little bit darker, and then it gives us the illusion of that weathered look around the edges without having to put a Grax or a shader or something else. Again, like I said, we're going to put a little bit of our homemade brew wash on there, which will enhance it some more, but really a lot of the work is being done with these base colors that we're adding on here. So really we're trying to, I don't want the deck to look the same color as the side, so I kind of want to have a lighter wood on the surface. And that's what I do on most of my ship that I paint. I do a similar color scheme. But I just wanted to show you how I actually apply this. I usually kind of just point at the colors and show you that I put it on there. But I actually wanted to show you how I apply it. And it really is just a lot of working it in. And if I decide if it's not bright enough, I just keep going back and adding more to the center and brightening it up. So again, just start from the center, push your way out to the edges. And going to keep going till it's, light enough in this color before we move on to the next color. And I don't want to go right to the very, very edge because I still want to leave some of that shadowing. And you can see we're slowly getting kind of a weathered look to our top. So then we're going to move to yellow ochre and real brown together. This will be the next color. So we're going to mix these two, do half and half, and mix them together. And then we're going to add that on there. And then you can see it's just a lighter of the Cafe Latte. It's a lighter version of it. Those two colors mixed together. And we're just slowly, just like we did on the outside of the ship, brightening it up by going from layer to layer on top of there. And it's going to give us a nice rich deck. And you can see we're getting some nice shadowing. And really we're doing this without having to do, any kind of contrast paints or speed paints and stuff like that. So again, like the other color, we are continuing to brighten it up slowly. Don't get too crazy and add too much on there. Just do a little bit at a time, brush it in, go back a little bit more, brush it in. That way you won't get it too bright. And kind of mess up what you've done. Now, if you do end up getting it too bright, you might have to go back to like a real brown, cover the entire thing, and kind of go back with those brightening colors over top of again. And hopefully that doesn't happen, but it may happen, right? When you're first trying this out, it might be you might decide you put too much in there. What is too much, right? That's really the real trick of this, is knowing when to stop. So now we're going to do yellow ochre by itself. Now we've added all those rich colors underneath. We're going to add the brightest color to our deck, and that is the yellow ochre on its own. And that'll give us our last highlight on this deck top. And again, this is done exactly the same as the other two. You can see I started from the middle, and I kind of work my way out to the edges. And I'm being really extra careful with this because yellow ochre can be really, really bright, and you can get out of control here real quickly, and then just have to fix things up. And so it's better just to have a little bit of paint on there and just slowly build that up. All right, so this is after I've done adding all those colors, and now we're going to move into coloring the outside and inside. So this is a color called Cardinal Red, and this one's Apple Red. So one's a kind of a darker red and a lighter red. It's similar to the Army Painters Pure Red, which is a really light red, and their Dragon Red, which is a really dark red. That's what I would normally use. But this is a good folk art substitute. So move to his finer brush. Obviously, this is finer detail work, and we're going to have to go. And I'm just showing you which I'm going to hit on here. I don't actually show you this entire painting process in here, because this does take a little bit of time. But I kind of get as close as I can to the edges. And same thing. Start from the middle, work your way out. If you don't get it fully painted, that's fine. I usually try to cover out the most of it, and you'll get your highlights by adding the lighter red over top afterwards. But this takes some time, and you're trying to not hit the deck and the other places that you've painted already. So just that's a little tricky in there. So this is after I've done it. You can see I pretty well covered most of it. And this is the Apple Red. So this is a lighter red, and this is used to just the highlight. So again, we're going to start from working in the middle, and I work our way out to the edges. And we're going to have to do each different compartment. You can see I've gone to an even smaller brush now. We're going to more detailed brush, and we're just going to kind of work that way in the center here. I just wanted to show you a couple just so you get an idea of how to do it. But this is similar to what I did in the bark video, but I was using greens in that case. So speaking of green, we're going to start with this dark green called Thicket, and it's kind of our dark undertone. And then we're going to go to what we call a classic green. This is the highlight color for our green insides and outsides that we're going to do here. So I didn't mention, but I did paint the outside of the other ship with the red, similar to the way I did the inside of the other one. So this is a classic green now. I've already added the darker green in, and you can see I've highlighted a few areas already, but I just figured I'd show you again. Same thing, just with a smaller brush, hit it from the center, work your way out, and just give yourself a nice little highlight inside here. So we're trying to get the same weathering effect, but just using dark to light color tones on here to help give us a little bit of highlight in here. Again, hit the outside of the other ship because we're kind of doing opposite. That's what I decided to do. So then I took it a step further, and we went to bright green. So we're going to highlight it even further. I decided, that classic green is just not quite bright enough for me. I'm going to go in and hit it with this bright green too. And same way as I showed you in the other ones, start from the center, work your way out. So we're not going to cover over that again. But you can see it's just added a little bit of brightness to it. Okay, so then I moved to matte black on the trim here, kind of match the sample ship over here. I'm going to do the tops and the edges, and I want to cover those metallic areas too, because that's going to help us get some convincing metal on there. So I got to cover it with black. And I know we originally had it black, but it's just a lot easier to dry brush the whole ship at once and then go back. It seems like we're painting over a few times over, but that's all right. It'll make it even more durable. But we're going to just frame it all out in the black. And don't worry about being not super neat. You can always go back and color in the, over where you've kind of messed it a few spots. And then we hit yellow ochre to do some of the trims. I just want to mention that the yellow ochre is a matte finish. There is matte finishes for a lot of these folk art craft paints. The ones that I usually use are satin. They're just because they're more durable. And they're a little more chip resistant, I would think, than the matte. But the matte you can paint over top and gives it a matte finish. So I'm definitely going to do that with the black. I have a matte version right here of the pure black, and we're going to put that over top of the black we already did to give it a matte finish so it doesn't look so bright. Trying to get rid of some of that bright craft paint look to it by using some of the matte versions of it. So now we're going to make that wash. So I use the matte black, that cafe latte, and real brown. I kind of equal parts all three. And then I added actually just dirty water from my, so half water, half paint into my little tray here and mix it around. Now, I kind of played around with it a little bit while to get it the right consistency. And I used the masks on the ships to determine that. So when it was translucent enough, or it just left enough color on the dowels there, then I knew I had it right consistency for using it as a wash. So essentially I was, hitting all the edges and stuff on the ship and the same areas I would have done if I had Agrax Earthshader, but I kind of made my own version. So adding those two different browns and the black, matte black, gives it a matte finish, which we want on here for this wash, but also gives us that kind of grungy look that Agrax Earthshader does a really good job of. We're making our craft paint version of it. You can see I usually cover with that kind of color Agrax Earthshader on the dowels on the ships that I paint. But this worked good. This craft paint version of it worked out great. So I kind of put it on here. I'm going to go back and highlight a few areas again with some of the red, but I just want to kind of, fill in some of the corners and darken it up a little bit, maybe around where the sail is. You can see I pulled some back from the edges of the decks. And this worked out pretty good. This worked out as a really good wash. I did actually manage to pour the rest of that out of there and save it in a jar, and I'm going to continue using it because it worked so well. So now we're going to move to our metallics. This is a folk art paint called Silver Sterling. And it's a really good metallic paint. Actually, folk art's metallics are fantastic. Their gold colors are great. They have really good metallics. So I wanted to get that black down there, undertone, and just kind of lightly cover it with that silver on there. And then we're going to hit it with our lovely little wash that we created here. Our Plunder Den wash. I'm just going to show you how I just added the metal on here. Just a little bit on here. It is really, actually really good. Folk Art has great metallics. It's one of their strongest things in their lines of craft paints is their metallics. So once I've done that, we're going to add our wash. So I got these all painted up. I just wanted to show you, how it looked after I added the wash to it. So it looks great there, but I'm going to brush some on for you here in a minute here, just so you can see what it looks like. So you can see this, it works really good, actually. I mean, for being a craft paint wash, this came out pretty good. And on top of that metallic, I get that nice gunmetal look that I'm actually looking for. I could actually probably do a cannon like this, judging by how well this worked out. But yeah, that was really, I was questioning if that was going to work or not, but I was determined to do this entire ship in craft paint and not have to use any other kinds of paints on completing this project. So this is a brief, just how I do the masks. You can see that those are all covered in that wash I put on. I use tacky glue. I've been using that now for putting this wood together. It works great. And I just want to point out, these are all the little bits that I keep from inside the Firelock game ships. Those are great for handles on doors. So don't throw those little bits out. They're really useful for handles on doors of your buildings and stuff. Now, as far as the sails go, I have a lot of pre-cut these cardboard like versions of the sails that I use as tracing devices. I have one for every ship in that Firelock Games carries. And this is the fabric I use. Is Fabric Creations. It's from Walmart. Really thin fabric. The reason why you want it thin is you want the paint to be able to bleed through it. And when you're making sails, that's how you're going to get it to, stick together properly. So really, I just take my lovely little template I've made here, trace it out onto the fabric, get my fabric scissors out, and cut them out. And that's pretty much it. That's how I cut the sails out. So I got 2 big ones, 2 small ones. We got 2 ships here, so we're going to need 4 sails. And I did the flag too as well at the same time. So the flag is, you want to do double the length of the flag because you're going to roll it over a dowel. So you leave a little space in the middle for the dowel. And you want to double it up because we want to have that wavy look to it. So we want the fabric to be a little thicker than the sails. So that's why I double it up like that. It makes it a little sturdier. So this is my kids' ball. I got this one from Walmart. You can get it from dollar stores. It's a smooth one. Make sure you get a smooth one, not something that has texture on it. And that way, when you paint these sails onto it, I just use it to get the billowed shape of my sail, or at least a little more billowed than normal. And I just paint them right onto that ball. I let them dry for 24 hours. I actually go away for quite some time. And then I'm doing the flag here at the same time. So this is a lid of a Sterilite tote. And there's a shiny part, and then there's this textured part. Now make sure you use the textured part because it leaves texture on the other side. If you use the smooth part, it'll be too shiny and smooth on the other side, and it's hard to get it to look like it's material or sail. It's just the craft paint just becomes smooth on the other side. You don't want that. So use the texture part. And again, use that craft paint. And I'm using not the matte one. I'm using actually the stronger one because it dries harder. The satin version of it. And I just put these dowels in here, and while it dries in the formation of the dowels, right? So that gives you a nice little wave in your flag. Now you can get really creative with this. I've done all sorts of different variances of it. Just showing you that I use that apple red, and I kind of pulled it from the edges of the mass, just so you get that kind of faded red look. Just kind of added some decorative looks to it. I decided to do the tops and bottoms of these in red. I always paint my masks. I know I don't like seeing a bare mast. I like to have colors on it. All the sailing ships I've ever seen, it has color or something on it. It's just bare wood. So I just kind of just showing you I'm doing all 4 of them. And I went back to the yellow ochre and did the front trim. So I kind of matched the very first ship that I painted. I did that same kind of highlight on it. And this, like I said, this is just yellow ochre. And we just kind of framed it out on there. I went back with a little bit of my wash and kind of washed a few different areas to make it look a little more dirty. It roughed up a little bit. But essentially that's the look of the entire mast. Now, you don't have to paint your mast at all. That's just me. It's just a personal preference for me. I like them that way. So now I pulled the sails off the ball. And you can see that the paint's bleed through a little bit. But it's completely not on the other side. So now, because I wanted to paint different colors on the back sides. So we're going to do the 2 green colors. So we're going to do this Sicken in the bright green on the one, on the backs of the one sails. And then back to the cardinal red and the apple red on the other one. And we're just going to paint the backs of these and highlight the center with the brighter colors. And this flag, I got to paint back the black on the opposite side. So then it'll dry harden on both sides. And this is an example of a completed flag. So that's essentially what I'm going for. Yeah, once the completed the black, we're going to add those 2 reds to it to give me my Spanish flag. So this is after I've added the colors on there. You can see it's kind of stiffened really good now. Because we actually have craft paint on both sides, on the front and the back now. And it kind of holds its shape now. And makes it pretty solid. Actually, it's kind of like a piece of leather now. It's kind of crazy. And you're going to need to do my rigging on here now. Before I put the sails on, I use a pair of tweezers in my rigging. And I just, there's not much rigging on these ships, but there's a little bit on these Barcalangas. It's similar to the bark. Now using my Gorilla Glue, this is optional, but I like to put dabs of the super glue on where the knots are, and there's no way those knots are coming apart. It'll rip somewhere else along the line, not where the knots are, once that Gorilla Glue dries. But again, wants to be portable. I want to be able to move it up and down those masts, and I want them to be really sturdy. So that's why I added that extra little protection with a little bit of super glue there. All right, so now I'm going to add the sails. Now, this might be blasphemy, but I just hot glue them on. When they get kind of like leather like this, I just hot glue them on. It's simple. I'm not going to sew them on. I could. You could do that. Just use a sewing needle and use some thread. You can do that, but I'd rather just hot glue them. It's much faster. So I'm kind of just give you a brief demonstration of how I put the sail on and just kind of how I get the X on it. So I just kind of do the edges. And it just helps me visually see where it's going to be and kind of figure out where the center of this X is going to be right there. So I decided that's where the center of the X on the Spanish flag is going to be. And then we're going to go from there, kind of just follow the waves on the flag. This will take a few passes, and make sure you water down your craft paint in this situation because craft paint is really thick. And if you're doing precision work, and it sounds to be super precision because it's really just an X with some little spikies on it, and we're just gonna try to copy that as best as we can. So I'm just showing you, I'm thickening it out. So once I put in the basic shape of the X, and then I go back and go over it a few times, and just make them a little thicker, the lines on here, and then where you can see where the edges are, you can actually just trace it on the back side, and because we're going to paint both sides of the sail here. I'm only going to show you the one side, but just so you know that we're painting both sides of the flag here. So you get something like this, and if we mess up too much, you can always go back with the black and kind of just trim it out again. It's not a big deal. Just go in here. I realized after I painted this, I went a little bit too thick, and then I went back and I just thinned it out a little bit with my black paint again. And I decided I didn't add enough thorns, so I went back and added some more of those. But anyways, this is really just how I'm quickly applying it. Really, when I start adding the apple red, I really started making a little more straight, the lines on it, a little more detailed. I just want to get that basic color down, and that's what I'm doing here. So this is after I've added it. I'm okay with that. Looks fine. The backside, good enough. And make a quick Spanish flag. So now I'm going to go back to the apple red, and we're just going to highlight the center of there. I had to go over it a few times. You can't see it initially that it's brighter, but it does over a couple layers it becomes brighter, and it works out really good to highlight your flag. I just really want it to pop off that black background, and at a distance these flags look great. At close up, they're a little they're not the greatest, but I think they're just fine for what I'm trying to do here for the Spanish flag. All right, so this is what it's done. So it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll just put that on the top there. Now, I already had one made from the other ship. And, really, I only need two for the two ships that are going with me. So I'm pretty happy with these finished product. You can go look at all the weathering we did on there, on the metallics, on the deck, on the greens and the reds. And we left some bare wood areas where, we did all that work to put all those undertones on there. So, and then the colors on the masts and the sails and the flag. All right, so let's take it out to the battlefield here. I wanted to try these guys out. I did a 3-ship fleet, a Spanish fleet here. And I really just wanted to try it out. I'm probably going to demo it a few times and see how I like it. Working out the right configuration of guys on each one for AdeptiCon. I do plan on playing 2 of these Barcalongas in my force at the sea tournament in AdeptiCon. So there's different options that I can go with. You're allowed 250 points, so you can easily fit 2 Barcalongas on there. And I haven't decided if I want to make one a boarding ship and one a gunship. So the cool thing about Barcalonga is you can have medium guns on the front. decks there on those chaser guns, so that really makes it kind of deadly, actually, at long range. So I'm wondering if I should just make them 2 gunships, or should I make one a gunship and make the other one boarding ship, where it has a lot of boarding crew on it, but lots of swivel guns on it. I haven't quite decided yet, so I'm playing around with that, trying to plan a few different scenarios. And in this particular scenario, they're finding a light frigate and a bark here. English Navy, lots of Marines and regulars and all sorts of craziness going on here. And really trying different ships and different crews up against these Barcalangas, and really getting ready for AdeptiCon and trying out different forces to see how they play out. All right, so that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this paint tutorial. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.